This is Thumbing Through the Archives, a weekly radio show and podcast focusing on Michigan history, airing every Wednesday night from 5:30 to 7 p.m. on WMIC 660 AM and 95.3 FM. Also streaming in podcast form at our website, senlacbroadcasting.com. Now your hosts, Mike Gallagher, Nick Lean, and Erica Frisbee.
So, welcome once again to Thumbing Through the Archives, a podcast exploring the oddities, curiosities, and crimes in Michigan's history. From covering the long-lost cold cases to exploring historical roots of myths, we're here to do it all. I'm Erica. I am the Sound Like Broadcasting Company News Director, and with me today is... I'm not going to point.
I'm Mike Gallagher. I'm from the Sanilac County News.
I'm Nick Lean. I'm the Assistant Manager at Sanilac Broadcasting.
We've been trying to figure out who is supposed to go next after me in introductions, and Nick has been a rascal in switching it up lately.
I think it's just Midwestern polite.
Not at all. That's not what I was going for. I'm just going for unpredictability every episode.
Oh.
So I think 2 episodes ago, I cut you off and went first. And then last episode, Erica pointed who was going to go first. And then this episode, I just thought I wouldn't say anything and just see what happens.
What a rascal.
It's like the most exciting thing of my week. It's happened.
I'm so sorry. Well, this should also get things a little bit more thrilling. Maybe good, maybe bad. Hopefully good. But... today we're going to be going back to what I do best, which is covering...
Murder,
but in this case, who knows if it's murder? We're not exactly sure.
Yeah, murder's not the right word.
All we know is that somebody is dead, and that somebody probably covered it up.
Yeah, this is a story that I'm kind of familiar with. I remember hearing about it as a kid. It was big news, and growing up, you know, every once in a while, someone would reference it as one of the Sanilac County area's great mysteries. And I'm excited to dive into it. Who are we talking about, Erica?
We will be talking about one Daniel Lewis Hazard, who he was originally from, I'm going to say Buell Township, just in part because that's where he lived at the time of his death. And yes, I'm just going to come out and say he is our victim. Daniel Lewis Hazard is the name of our victim. Usually we try and leave a bit of mystery to that, but no, if anything, it is a lot easier to follow the story if you know who the victim is right up front.
That's kind of the story.
That too.
The person is deceased.
Yeah. I've lost sleep over this case, both in good and bad ways. Good because it is a fascinating case. I don't know if it's an exercise in like obvious solutions because it's not solved, but there's a couple of things that make it seem that there should have been a solution by now. Mm-hmm. So I'm really interested to share that with you because at least in how it was presented in the newspapers, it was much more mysterious than it is once you actually get your hands on the case file.
Is this still an open case?
Technically, it's an inactive case.
Mm-hmm.
So it may be open, but inactive. It may be closed and inactive. But currently nobody is looking into it.
Except for you.
Except for me.
For you. Yeah.
Aren't you boys lucky?
Mm-hmm.
All this fun, messed up stuff. I do have a slideshow to show some of the crime scene photos to you guys. Nothing too grisly. I'm going to be playing that for you guys, or at least thumbing through it, pun not intended, for you guys during our break, just because I don't want to turn off the recorder while we're doing this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some of those photos you and I accidentally stumbled upon.
We saw a dead body.
I just saw you like, oh, he's going for it already.
We saw a dead body. Do you want to see it?
Yeah, we accidentally.
I knew it.
I think that some of these crime scene photos were supposed to be redacted.
Yes.
The grisly parts had a black square or circle over them, and one, we're kind of flipping through them, and one of them did not have the circle.
In fairness to the person who was redacting everything, it took us several minutes to figure out what we were looking at because of just how things were.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Mike is just making faces like, I don't think I want to get there.
Well, it sounds like it might be your fault.
Which one?
Both of you for looking at it for so long.
No, 100% of the... No, 100% I accept the blame.
It sounds like you
I'll take full
wanted to
blame.
see the dead body.
No, it was me. I had it up and I said, hey, wait a minute, Erica, come look at this. Is this what I think it is? And then she noticed a detail that matched the autopsy report, and we determined that what we were
Looking at
in
was a
fact
body.
looking at wasn't a pile of beef jerky, it was a dead body.
I'm only laughing because I don't know what else to do.
That could have been worse.
Yeah, it could have been a whole lot worse. But no, that was an ongoing theme in this research that I did. Some things were redacted when they really didn't need to be. Like, they attached a newspaper article to their files and then redacted the name that was in the article, as if I couldn't look up the article on newspapers.com unredacted.
Mm-hmm.
Like it redacted the author?
No, it redacted like a person who was involved in the case, like the mom. And again, it's like, I can go onto the Times Herald right now and find out.
Yeah.
And then they would sometimes not redact certain names. So that both helped me in confirming some identities and then also helped me get more confused, honestly, in some cases.
Yeah, it doesn't help.
No. But I think that's enough pleasantries. Let's just dive right in.
That was pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now I'm worried about what we're actually going to get into.
I was going to say, you've seen my search history.
Yeah.
It should be kind of fun. So, when it comes to stories, particularly the complicated ones, there are the versions we know, the versions we're told, and the actual truth. Sometimes it's all the same thing, but other times, such as this story, there's a major difference between what is rumored, what is believed, and what is actually known. This is the case of one Daniel Lewis Hazard, whose disappearance and death led to a plethora of rumors and theories, but no concrete answers. Daniel Lewis Hazard was by no means a perfect person. Far from it, as many would later attest, but his personality makes sense in terms of his childhood. When he was born, October 30th, 1959, his mother, Virginia, was with her second husband, having lost her first to death. From her first marriage came 3 children, Randy, Sandy, short for Sandra, and Rex, and from her second, she would have her last child, Daniel. Though she married twice more after divorcing Frank Lung, Daniel's biological father, Virginia would ultimately return to her maiden name, Van Conant, and would remain single for the rest of her life. She also returned to her family's roots, raising her family in Croswell, her children attending the local Croswell-Lexington School District as a result. I'm assuming everyone graduated high school, as I didn't see anything saying that they didn't.
Why is his last name Hazard? Getting there. Okay.
Though her next husband, Dale Hazard, adopted Daniel. Sorry. It feels almost like a slap in the face of like...
No, it's...
Yeah, Dale Hazard adopted Daniel. That was her third husband. So the one after she divorced Frank. So after Dale, even though Dale adopted Daniel, it was not a good family dynamic, with half-brother Randy saying later that Dale was abusive and only wanted the children as slave labor for his farm.
Yikes.
Right. So I'm hoping that Daniel was young enough where he wasn't really included in all that, but it's hard to say. Well, we can't ask either adoptive father or son about their relationship to the other, as they are both dead. It would at least seem that there was either a lack of parental supervision or it was acts of rebellion that led Daniel to be in trouble with the law by the time he was 16. At age 16, he earned 3 years of probation for breaking and entering. By 19, he had been arrested several times for weed and LSD possession, and even stabbed several times in the back during a fight in Port Huron around that time.
Can I ask what time period we're talking about here for when he's a teenager and getting in all this trouble?
This would be about 70s, I would say.
Okay.
70s, early 80s at the very latest.
Okay.
Yeah, and at age 25, he added assault to his rap sheet. This last charge is ultimately not surprising. For one, Daniel, even as he neared 39 years old in 1998, bragged about how he could handle himself in a fight and that he had a few people around the area looking to settle a score with him. For another, he was known to beat his romantic partners, with his ex-wife and ex-girlfriend attesting to such. The police had been called for both women during incidents with Hazard ultimately ending up moving back in with his mother around 1996 after his 1993 divorce from his wife. He'd celebrated the 15th anniversary of beginning work at Yale Rubber, is it now Trelleborg?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But yes, he worked at Yale Rubber / Trelleborg, whichever name you know it by. Even so, the 15th year anniversary of starting work at Trelleborg, like him having a steady job, that was maybe the one thing he really had going for him as he entered 1998. So the prior year, his own sister had called the police on him when he began beating his girlfriend in front of the family during Christmas. From January to July 1998, he was being harassed by the ex-husband of his ex-wife, as he had been seen with her helping her deliver papers on her Times Herald route, to the point that his vehicle's tires were reportedly tampered with. And then, in June, he had his butt thoroughly handed to him in both pool and a fight, even after he tackled his opponent from behind and bit his cheek. Yeah, we'll get more into the fight later on, but let's just say, I don't even want to say that he fought dirty, because I would imply that he fought well. And he definitely did not in this fight.
Biting is a sign of desperation.
Oh, 100%. And again,
unless you're Mike Tyson.
Then came July, and he was off work for several days. Some involuntarily. He was suspended for 3 days for sexually harassing a coworker at Yale Rubber, now Trelleborg, but most voluntarily, as there was a GM strike happening, one that would last 54 days during the summer of 1998, and by being laid off, he could at least collect some unemployment. While some of those details weren't reported to the press, much less the public, what was shared that was on July 21st, Daniel spent a day at the beach with his sister and 2 nephews, promising the youngsters they'd go fishing the next day. Returning home that hot and humid day, Daniel cut some wood for his mother before taking a break. As she arrived home from work at Patriot Sensors in Peck, Daniel was leaving, telling her that he was going for a drive to Croswell. He never returned from that drive. There were little to no signs that he was voluntarily missing. Not only did he not take anything besides his car, but he had planned to return to work the next week. By leaving in his burgundy 1986 Olds Cutlass, with only the clothes on his back, which was like a tank top and shorts, stuff that he was doing yard work in, nothing substantial by any means. Not only did he leave behind job obligations and a brand new motorcycle, but his mother, who busied herself by calling around to every one of Daniel's friends, trying to find him herself. She and her daughter denied that drugs or alcohol could have been involved. However, due to his age, Michigan State Police marked him down as voluntarily missing, as people who went missing at his age usually wished to remain missing.
How old was he?
He was 38.
Okay.
However, they did have to admit that it was odd for such a case to still be unsolved after a month, and then another, with most voluntary missing cases being solved within a week, usually by the missing person directly. So, in September, an award of $1,000 was offered by the family, with the family explaining that they'd offer more if they could afford more. In addition to this, they plastered posters around Port Huron, having heard rumors that he had friends or even foes with information in that area of the thumb. Then, on the afternoon of October 27th, as an officer looked for trespassing hunters on a DTE property in Worth Township, about 9 miles southeast of Croswell, they found a very familiar vehicle, the burgundy car of Daniel Hazard, and worse yet, though they could not see him when they approached the car, they could smell the scent of death seeping through the cracked window. An autopsy 2 days later confirmed what was already believed, that they found the body of Daniel Hazard, and chances were that he was dead within a day of going missing in July, and that the car had been there since about then as well. And go ahead.
Can we pin in on where this car was found? Was it like way back off the beaten path? I always imagined it like way back off the road, like tough to find.
It was like at least, we'll be getting more into like the specific
geographic location.
Yeah, we'll be getting more into that in the next section, but the property was heavily wooded by like thorn apple trees and brush and shrub. And according to the guy who found it, like he had literally been within 100 feet of the car like the week prior, had no idea that it was there. If he hadn't caught like the sun glint off the back window,
it was
probably
kind of like hidden in plain sight. Mm-hmm. So it's not like someone took it way, way back in the forest to hide it. It was...
Well, yes and no. They definitely took it off the beaten path. They took it onto a property that they knew that people weren't supposed to be trespassing on.
Mm-hmm.
So, in a way, kind of the equivalent of taking it as far back into the woods as you can go, because if anything, I don't know if he wanted to check on it necessarily, but if he wanted to make sure that he stayed out of trouble, I could definitely see somebody like, okay, I want to put it in a spot where like I can at least drive past it on the road and see if people are in there, or like,
okay, so you could like drive by and see if it had been tampered with, or if...
Not exactly. You could drive by and see if there's a line of police vehicles leading back to it.
Gotcha.
So it's deeper on the property, but the path that you get to it is seen from the road, if I understand correctly. That was the problem at the end of the day, though. Like, the car and the body had been there since July, and the body had deteriorated so much that it was impossible to tell the cause of death. With Daniel found face down, there were theories that he suffocated, with him also wrapped in a mattress pad cover, beach towels, and his gray tank top shirt. After Daniel was found, the award increased thanks to a $1,000 donation each by the Sound Like Drug Task Force and Crime Stoppers.
That's nice.
Yeah. But then, at least from how it's reported in the newspaper, the developments stopped, with it 1998 when Virginia and Randy took matters into their own hands and sat down with the Times-Herald, sharing information for both an article and a direct plea, help us find justice. Very unhappy with police inaction, Virginia admitted that she and her family were suspicious of other people in the community, especially as police believed Daniel was not alone when he died. Another friend of Daniel's, Scott Hicks, also expressed his frustration at the seeming lack of action by police, with the police unable to share much information with the family due to the investigation sensitivity. This is what was shared in the papers. However, there is much more to the story, and for that we'll have to rewind once more to when Daniel went missing that July night. Okay, and we are back. So, delving a bit deeper into the case, I was able to get the Michigan State Police case file. While the files as provided by the investigators were redacted for the most part, between a few spots where they overlooked a name and a set of the files provided to me that were unredacted, I was able to piece together a narrative. To be clear, despite what I'm sharing, my official word on the matter is that I don't claim to know and will not point fingers at who could possibly be the killer. I am merely presenting this information in hopes that anyone with other related information can help solve the case. The interpretation of the facts I leave up to you, the listeners. So, let us try to reconstruct this man's last day as best we can. The morning of July 21st, Daniel mowed the lawn for his mother, who went off for her job on the assembly line at Patriot Sensors in Peck. He then left the home in Buell Township between Croswell and Peck, heading into Sandusky to certify for unemployment and pick up a check from work. It was his second week of the layoff. After he finished those errands, he headed to Lexington Beach with his sister and her two sons. They ate lunch at Steese's, and according to Hazard's sister, it was a good day with her brother. She had been worried that he was still mad at her about calling the police on him in defense of his then girlfriend, but if there was any ill will, he did not show it, promising her boys they would go fishing the next day. Indeed, for all of his flaws, Hazard was a family man. Though it appears he had no children of his own, he appeared to be a good brother, a good son, and a good uncle, loyal and for the most part responsible. He had worked at Trelleborg for over 15 years, and aside from some behavioral issues such as the aforementioned sexual harassment, he had been prompt and communicative with his supervisors, keeping them up to date on when he was taking sick days and personal time, to the point of calling one supervisor at home after hours. The main reason he chose the voluntary layoff seemed to be in part because of his comfortability in taking days off. He was running low on vacation days, and with his sister and nephews making the trip from out of state, he did not want to miss spending time with them. He had also recently started at a new workstation at his job, working the presses, and he was not very comfortable operating them as he was with the previous machinery, so the layoff may have been seen as some much-needed relief from a work stressor. After returning home from lunch, Daniel started cutting woods, but even in shorts and a tank top, the day was becoming too hot, with the man taking a break around the time his mother came home from work. There is some divergence in when Hazard left his home for that fateful evening drive, with the original report saying 8 p.m. and then later being amended to 6 p.m. Either way, this was the last time the family saw Daniel alive. Seeing that her son was 38 years old, I don't blame her for not questioning where he was when he didn't return that night. But as that Tuesday night stretched into the weekend, Virginia began calling anyone she could think of who might have seen him. That call prompted at least one work friend to drive around the back roads around Buell Township, looking at ditches and on the sides of the road, just in case he had had an accident or was even just pulled over, sleeping off some booze. No dice.
How many days had passed at that point?
By the weekend, it would have been 4 to 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the Monday, that would have been officially 6 days. And it was the Monday, July 27th, that Virginia called Michigan State Police to report Daniel missing. However, within 2 hours of receiving that report, Daniel was listed as voluntarily missing.
That's so weird that they default to that. I've never heard of that before, but I suppose there's a reason for it.
Yeah, again, I guess I get it if experience just tells you that somebody decided to go off the grid for a few days and just didn't want to tell anybody because they wanted to get away from the world.
The amount of middle-aged men walking out on their families kind of thing, too.
Yeah, and since he was an adult living with his mother,
yeah,
they probably got a lot of calls like that as well.
So yeah, they probably were just this old woman is just so worried about her son.
Mm-hmm.
So when they contacted Trelleborg supervisors the next day, so Tuesday, July 28th, they learned that Hazard typically worked the afternoon shift, 3 to 11 p.m., and had good attendance across his 15 years at the company, with his absence being odd and lack of communication even odder. Police learned that Hazard had notably asked for work off in January 1998 so he could handle some personal issues, and then in June so he could recover from a bar fight. So, yeah, the supervisor had talked with him July 9th or 10th when Hazard informed him he would be taking the 2-week layoff, but he did see him the 1 or 2 times that he came in to pick up his check. The particular personal drama Hazard was dealing with in January was related to his ex-wife and her ex-husband. This part may get confusing because to try and preserve some...
This is where the supplemental material comes in.
This is where the supplemental material comes in, and just so you guys know, if you guys use their names, that's okay. I'll just work around it.
Beep it.
I'll beep it, yeah. But...
because these are names I recognize.
There's no way to win sometimes when you cover the local cases. So, the particular personal drama Hazard was dealing with in January was related to his ex-wife and her ex-husband, though it extended past that January. A work friend of Hazard's shared that he thought Daniel was trying to avoid his ex and her ex-husband, who turned into her stalker. So if I say stalker, that's just the ex-husband.
Who turned into Daniel's ex-wife's stalker? Or stalk?
So Daniel married the wife. They got divorced. She married this other guy. They got divorced. The other guy started stalking her.
I see. And then she started going back to Daniel to be like, hey.
Help me.
Help. Yeah.
Yeah, essentially.
Got it.
Especially in recent months, he was trying to avoid all that. This, of course, came after the ex-husband broke a personal protective order in January, puncturing the ex-wife's home's gas tank. Literally, punctured the gas line. And was generally prowling around the property, as well as another incident in January where the ex-husband rammed the car that Hazard and the ex-wife were in as they were delivering newspapers. It is for this incident that Hazard had to take off work, as he had also confronted the ex-husband getting out of the car to try and stop him from ramming the car again. While the ex-husband denied having even seen his ex-wife that day, Both her and Daniel's story were similar, and the damage to the vehicle told enough of a story to get him in major trouble with the PPO. Though Daniel took time off in January, Daniel still dealt with the ex-husband and his antics, reporting damage to his car, including 3 punctured tires and a smashed grille. It wasn't the first time the car specifically had been damaged by the ex-husband, according to Daniel, who also accused him of stealing a pair of his shoes and later wearing them to a PPO court hearing.
That sounds like a piece of work.
Yeah. The work friend also shared that he had last spoken with Hazard the day before the disappearance, making small talk about unemployment and household chores. Hazard even teasing the friend about getting married, having recently returned from a canoeing trip with the work friend and his girlfriend. All in all, not the mindset of a man who planned on disappearing for no reason, nor of a man who thought himself in danger of anyone. With that information and the press finally picking up the story, all police could do was wait, be it for the man to magically appear again, apologetic for the confusion and possibly confused himself, or, unfortunately, for his body to turn up. In August, Randy Chappell was interviewed, with him telling police that they were extremely close and generally had dinner together once a week. However, he hadn't heard from him since the disappearance, which was odd, as Daniel would keep in touch with him even if he left the state, having done so before. It was all out of character for him. The half-brother also confirmed that Daniel used to grow marijuana, with his past offenses usually being possession or delivery of the drug, but the brother didn't think that it extended all the way to drug trafficking. Randy contacted the Michigan State Police again later that month and told them that despite having fallen out with his younger brother before over the treatment of women, specifically of Daniel's abuse of women, and his lifestyle in general, Randy still wanted to help with the investigation in any way possible. After all, this was the second brother he lost to death. His older brother, Rex, had died in a drunk driving accident about a decade or so prior, so his motivation to find answers was probably very strong. Daniel's ex-wife was also interviewed, and it became clear, despite the many redactions in the files, that she believed that Daniel was dead, though she did not share why or how she came to that conclusion, nor where he could be found. However, she did share that Daniel had managed to disentangle himself from her drama for the most part, and it seemed that she did not think that her ex-husband/stalker had anything to do with it. As August progressed, so did the rumors. Virginia Van Conant called about one that stemmed from a misunderstanding of a WMIC story. She thought that a body had been found in the river when it had just been a boating accident. Why she would be thinking he was in the river, wondered investigators, only to have that answered by way of a tip that someone in Croswell had been talking at their work about how Daniel had been beaten and thrown into a river.
So it was a combination of village hearsay, rumors, and then hearing a story completely unrelated.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, it was a giant game of telephone for some of these things, because with the radio story, for instance, Virginia didn't even hear the story directly. Her sister had heard the last couple seconds of it.
That happens so often.
Oh, yeah.
I would say once a week someone will hear the tail end of a story and misconstrue it, and call us, say that their friend heard something on the radio, and it's changed so many times by that point.
Yeah, that definitely happened here. We actually have news stories from 1996 in the file cabinets behind that cabinet in my office here. I nearly went back and tried to find the exact newscast that they were referring to. I decided not to, because otherwise I would be currently buried back under papers. Yeah, so I didn't end up doing that. But yeah, village hearsay, catching the tail end of a story and not actually hearing what the story was about, just the main gist of it. But the tip was essentially that someone in Croswell was talking at work about how Daniel had been beaten basically to death, and then thrown in the river to finish him off.
Could have just been someone who was like, oh, I bet that guy
I think that's
ticked
essentially
off the wrong person. And
I think that's essentially what it was, yeah. Because, they never were able to verify the tip, but it did explain a lot of the public's perception and reaction to the case as they knew it. It seemed that everyone agreed that Danny was dead, but if anyone knew who did it, well, that would stay a secret. And although they could understand why she was doing it, another possible snag in the case was the mother of the missing herself. Perhaps already unsatisfied by the lack of action on the case, Virginia had taken to investigating things herself, such as her son's last phone bill and trying to follow up on tips herself as she got them. She would later go so far in her efforts to be threatened with a harassment lawsuit, but I'm getting ahead of myself by several years. All that to say, while I understand where Mrs. Van Conant was coming from, I do wonder if she complicated the case more than helped it at times. But in almost every conversation police had about Daniel Hazard, a few things would consistently pop up. 1, Daniel was communicative but abusive towards women. He had a breathing issue that would see him stop breathing for seconds at a time and even pass out, and that he loved to fight and had done so in June. It wasn't until September did investigators learn more about the specifics of the June fight. It occurred sometime around June 18th, which is when Daniel called his supervisor to take time off to heal, and it had been outside of Croswell's Thumbs Up bar over a game of pool. Hazard's opponent had gotten the upper hand in the fight when Daniel seemed to concede, saying that he was tired. However, as soon as the opponent turned his back on Daniel, he was tackled, Daniel biting his cheek. So, again, not definitely a desperate move, but also I wouldn't say fighting dirty because, again, that would imply that he was fighting well in the first place. But rumor on the street was that the opponent and the opponent's brother wanted to settle the score and make sure that Daniel never fought dirty again. But they weren't able to follow up on that tip fully until after the body was found. So that was the fight. And then another tip that police received was that Daniel was allegedly a regular at Deja Vu, an adult establishment in Port Huron. And the tip essentially was that, we think he ran afoul of the resident wild man, someone who allegedly came into the business once in a dress and proclaiming himself as the reincarnated Princess Diana.
That was Dan?
No, this was the person that he may have gotten into an altercation with.
Amazing.
That tip, however, did not ultimately bear out. So unfortunately, Daniel did not fight Princess Di.
This was someone that went to Deja Vu?
Yeah. So Daniel was a regular at Deja Vu, apparently. And one of their resident weirdos, as it were, was Princess Di, as I'll nickname him.
Okay.
And the theory was by management was that, especially since Princess Di was rather volatile in her whimsies, that Daniel had been in the wrong place at the wrong time, made him mad, and things happened.
Gotcha.
But the tip didn't bear out because, for one thing, they couldn't really connect him to the guy past the fact that they both went to Deja Vu. Which also, wouldn't it suck if, you went to a strip club once and because of that, you were a murderer?
Right.
So around the same time, investigators learned that not only had Daniel once been in trouble with dealing drugs, but was possibly still using them, with an ex-girlfriend claiming that while visiting a local Port Huron crack house together that summer, Daniel stole $1,500 in cocaine and or marijuana. Something that made this tip all the more interesting was that the woman allegedly received threats from the drug dealers Daniel stole from, even when she moved out of state and to Florida to hide. When she returned, resolved to face the problem head-on, she reportedly found her apartment broken into and Daniel missing. Aside from the drug dealers, the woman noted that Daniel had a lot of enemies as he never backed down from a fight, even a losing one. Speaking of enemies, he also had victims, be they of harassment or abuse, by his hands. One woman had been so harassed by him that she quit only a few weeks into her job at Trelleborg and went so far as to ask then Detective Sergeant Dave Hall of the Salem County Sheriff's Department about how to obtain a personal protective order. She ultimately never pursued one, as the problem seemingly took care of itself, though she claimed she had no idea how the problem resolved itself, just as she was happy it did. It was resolved with him going missing, for the record.
So he was still harassing her even after she left?
Yes.
Trelleborg?
Yes. And then the harassment stopped. She was like, oh, thank goodness, he must have got the hint. And then she sees on the news, oh, he's missing. So, oof. Police regarded that tip with some interest, in part because the woman's brother had killed a previous boyfriend of hers, but ultimately, once again, the tip came to no fruition. Then there were the odder tips, such as Daniel allegedly being given concrete shoes for a drug debt, seen at a local beer tent, and being possibly picked up and dropped off near Deckerville while hitchhiking. All were followed up on, and indeed, they had a few interviews scheduled in the weeks prior to October 27th, when a sheriff's deputy checking the DTE property for trespassers found the seemingly abandoned vehicle of one Daniel Hazard. And we'll take another quick break right here. And we are back. So what are your guys' thoughts going into this next part? We've just refound the body, essentially.
Honestly, it gives me more questions, like knowing the backstory, than I thought I just had it all figured out. Like when you were showing us a slideshow during the break, 2 breaks ago, I didn't have the context that I do now. So I was, there's some photos in there that show the backseat of the car. Spoilers?
No.
That show like the backseat of the car where he was found. I'm like, well, maybe he just passed out or and didn't wake up. But now knowing what you just told us in this last segment, I have more questions than...
Yeah, we'll get ready for more questions because we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of the crime scene.
Well, yeah, and I see also this web you gave us of... So, to our beloved listeners, Erica makes these lovely graphics when there's an episode with lots of names that kind of has everybody's name and how they're related to each other. What is it, like a web graphic?
Spider graph, yeah.
Spider graph, thank you. And there's an entire side of it that we haven't even touched yet in terms of names, so...
Fun times. But yes, very mysterious times as well. What about you, Mike?
I mean, it seems like there's a lot of people that have motives at this point.
Yeah.
It seems like he's really upset a lot of different people.
That's a very diplomatic way of saying that. I like it.
The 2 brothers outside of Thumbs Up, how they were cleared, but how were they cleared?
They were cleared after the death was discovered, essentially, because they interviewed, as well as I think it was because they had 2 other witnesses to where they were the night that Dan went missing.
So they had an alibi, basically.
They had an alibi, basically, as well as the fact that people were saying that they were talking, the 2 people that they were supposedly talking with about the misdeeds that they supposedly did were independently, having not talked to each other ever, was I've never had a conversation with so-and-so in my life, let alone with so-and-so and the brothers together.
Okay. And then the person that he stole the $1,500 worth of drugs from, I think that...
Yeah, they didn't make
I don't know that they were necessarily cleared, but... Because I guess that was kind of more just a speculation or a rumor, but I would say that would be pretty good motive.
We'll probably get into it a little bit further down in this section, but there was also a possibility that he was an informant for the drug task force. There's a
Dan
chance.
Hazard?
Yeah, there's a chance.
It is kind of interesting how it overlaps with one of our previous episodes.
Yeah.
Of the St. Clair Drug Task Force.
Yes.
Because 98 would have been right around right when they were going through all of their stuff.
Yep. And then him growing pot plants.
Yep.
And when was that fire?
The fire for
across from the courthouse. That
was 1993.
Okay. No relation then.
No relation. However, it's definitely interesting that it seems that at least 2 people knew about the pot plants that he was growing. At least 2 people, which, again, 2 people can keep a secret if one's dead, is the old saying, I think it is. And it makes you wonder.
Who said he was an informant? Was that credible, or there was just whisperings?
It was somewhat credible because of the fact that, and again, we'll get more into it, but essentially he had sent somebody to Port Huron to pick him up some cocaine. When the guy got back to the drop spot, instead of Dan waiting for him, the drug task force was waiting for him. And so he got picked up for possession. Now, Daniel claims that he was at the drop spot, but when he saw all the police start filling up the yard, he went into the house at the drop spot and just hid.
Mm-hmm. For all Daniel knew, it could have been the other guy was the informant.
Exactly. Like, it's really hard to say, was Daniel an informant or was he a clueless guy who was like, I just wanted my drugs. I paid good money for that. Yeah, it's really hard to say, but there was at least one person technically in jail because of Daniel Hazard, and it was the guy who got nailed on possession for carrying his drugs. So yeah, unfortunately, more people who would want him dead than want him alive, it would appear.
That's the problem. Like, that's what makes it weird, is it's like the game Clue.
Yeah.
It feels like.
Yeah.
I think the ex-husband of his ex-wife also had maybe not good motive, but it also seemed like he was kind of
crazy.
Yeah, not exactly rational.
Right, and he probably took offense to the fact that Dan was helping out the ex-wife.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, and
I mean, he rammed the car with both of them in it.
Yeah, and if the ex-wife was a victim of abuse, she would probably be willing to cover, up anything potentially. But yeah, just a lot of different people with motives, it seems like.
Different motives, different angles.
Yeah.
And then we haven't even gotten to like one of our bigger suspects yet.
Yeah, like I said, there's basically another half of this.
Yeah,
web
that we haven't even touched. So when Detective Sergeant Brian Ferguson of the Michigan State Police was contacted about the find, it was the afternoon of October 27th, and Detective Sergeant Dave Hall of the Salem County Sheriff's Office was on the line. Not only did the car match hazards he reported, but there was a distinct smell of death emanating from the car. Not only that, but as initial indications bore out via autopsy results, Daniel Hazard likely died the same day he went missing. The exact timeline of the discovery goes something like this. At 12:55 p.m., a deputy made the discovery on the 700 or so acre property located on St. Clair Road, about 1/10 mile north of Wellman Line Road. Within 5 minutes, Hall was called, and it took him and now Sheriff Paul Rich about half an hour to make it to the scene. At 1:45 p.m., about 15 minutes after the initial discovery, Ferguson and the Michigan State Police were called to the scene, with Ferguson calling the Bridgeport Crime Lab to arrange for on-scene forensics immediately after. The prosecutor, who's now retiring actually, Brenda Sanford, and the medical examiner were contacted around 2:05 p.m., and the Michigan State Police officially arrived at the scene at 3:15 p.m.
That would have been Jim Young, wouldn't it?
They just said prosecutor Brenda Sanford.
Right.
So
I didn't realize she'd been there that long.
Yeah, it is more likely that she was the assistant prosecutor, but still, it
doesn't matter.
It was her that received the call for the prosecutor's office. But yeah, due to the crime scene analysis, the body didn't arrive at the Port Huron morgue until 1 a.m. So body was found at 12:55. It isn't until like a full 12 hours later that the body arrives at the morgue. Yeah,
I've seen enough CSI episodes to say that tracks, right?
I mean, yes and no. In CSI, they immediately send the body to the morgue.
Do they?
Yeah.
But they have to like secure the crime scene and check evidence and take pictures.
I was going to say, they do that all in 5 minutes, and then it's like, okay, let's pack this body up and get him down to the morgue.
Yeah, but now it takes like hours for anyone to get anywhere, like out where we are. So
yes, I was going to say, that's the real CSI that I want to see. CSI rural towns. So when Dave Hall arrived at the scene, one of the first things he noticed was the padlock on the car trunk, and seeing that he could smell a body but not see it from outside the car, common sense would dictate the body could be in the trunk. I'm sure Hall heaved a sigh of relief, but also of disappointment when he opened the trunk and found no body, but instead a spade, several spray cans of lubricant, I'm guessing WD-40, tools, white cloth gloves, and yellow rope. His search eventually led him to the passenger side of the vehicle, with him discovering the body wrapped in several layers of blankets on the back floor behind the seats. According to the deputy who found the body and the car, he had found the car by chance as he was patrolling the area, part of his 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift, noticing the glint of sunlight on the car's back window. It was truly a chance find, as just a week prior he had been in the area and been within 100 feet of the vehicle without even knowing, thanks in no small part to the thick groves of thornapple trees on the property. When he approached the car, thinking it was possibly belonging to a trespassing hunter, he instead realized that it fit the description of Daniel Hazard's Oldsmobile Cutlass, and that, with the driver's window rolled down, he too could recognize the scent of death. The car was found about 400 feet east of the road, then about 110 feet south of the property's 2-track path, lodged in heavy brush and small trees, with the vehicle facing south/southwest. Fallen foliage helped conceal the vehicle, which, based on the small trees around and under it and how they were healing after being driven over by the car, that put the car being disposed of at least 3 months prior, so if not the night, then shortly thereafter. Adding to that was the lack of fresh tire impressions or footprints at the scene, and how the tires had sunk into the ground nearly up to their rims in the soft earth. Odder yet, Daniel's keys were found hanging in a nearby tree about 25 feet from the vehicle, like behind the vehicle too, not in front of the vehicle, but behind it. When Ferguson arrived, Hall showed him the scene, opening the back door with a glove, a bit of blue flannel sticking out from under the door when it was still closed. A large amount of blankets, towels, and clothes were piled in the back seat, with still more items wrapped around Daniel's body, including a white twin-size mattress pad, a yellow fuzzy blanket, beach towels, and at least 3 flannel shirts, all secured by masking tape.
And when you say wrapped around the body, I mean like intentionally.
Yeah, kind of like a mummy.
Mm-hmm. And then taped.
And taped. Yeah, the taping is the...
Mm-hmm. So like I said, when you were showing us those photos and explaining the crime scene during the last break, you know, I was kind of playing devil's advocate and saying, well, maybe he just passed out or took a nap and didn't wake up, but clearly that's not what happened.
I mean, to be fair, like, if it was any other situation, I would completely be like, I could see that. If it was, he just happened to be underneath all these pile of clothes and stuff like that, then I could see somebody just driving the car into the area and just ditching it. No more interaction with the body than that. But instead, they took their time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but what for? Why? What's the purpose of that?
Right, exactly. That's one of the questions. Was it because you murdered him and you're trying to conceal that? Or are you trying to conceal something else? Because you don't conceal a body unless you're trying to conceal something bigger.
And also the keys in the tree.
It's so creepy.
There's a photo of those keys. First off, it's not like a tree like you would imagine. It's more like a bush. It's like a thornapple tree.
Yeah.
It's like almost like a autumn olive bush. And they're not, the way that they're placed or dangling in that tree suggests that somebody placed them there, not tossed them in the woods.
Yeah, not like...
They look as if they were gingerly put on a tree.
Yeah.
Or on a shrub, whatever it was.
I was going to say, because like one of my theories was like maybe they fought in the clearing and like somebody threw the keys, they went flying, and then things happened. But yeah, no, you pointing out the fact that like the branch would have broken, the branch wouldn't be perfectly balanced as it was. Like the keys would be...
In the photo, it's it looks like maybe 2 inches long.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. There's like
branch,
a key fob.
And it's very thin, and the key ring is dangling like perfectly on the branch. Mm-hmm. Like a hook, like a key hook.
It's such a small branch that it's almost kind of surprising that it was able to stay there.
Yeah, for so long.
Yeah, for months. Because it seems like if there was like a windy day or something, it would knock them off.
Yeah.
But
you would think so, but apparently not, which is again so weird. So, found with him on the floorboards was a fishing rod. Everything in the car, save for the mattress pad, was identified by Virginia as either Danny's or the family's. The mattress pad seemed to have been provided by whoever disposed of the body. Another thing that the car revealed was a large number of insects, with Ferguson estimating that this would be the 3rd or 4th generation of this particular nest, as it were. So essentially, by generations, they were able to once again approximate when Danny was killed. So being third or fourth generation, flies typically have a 22-day life cycle. So for it to be the fourth generation, it would put it just a little over 3 months or so. So I'm going to be reading directly from the crime scene notes. It's nothing too gnarly or anything like that, but there's just some things where it's like how they described it was just the best way to describe it. So the vehicle was initially entered by laboratory personnel through the driver's door. The roof liner had lost adhesion to the roof and was hanging down. An oily film covered most of the interior of the vehicle. A hairbrush was on the middle of the front bench seat. The driver's side front door supported 2 white gloves, papers, and leaves. The passenger side front seat had a purple afghan draped over the backrest. The passenger side front floorboard supported a tire iron. The back passenger seat supported several articles of clothing, including a blue flannel shirt, a red and black flannel shirt, a white and black flannel shirt, a black flannel shirt, blue sweatpants, a black tank top, beach towel, a green bath towel, a flowered white towel, and a white afghan. Masking tape, apparently used as bindings, were intermingled within the heap of clothing. The back driver's side seat supported a white mattress pad and yellow blanket. The victim was beneath the pile of clothing on the floorboards. The victim's skin was dry and decomposing, insect activity having apparently occurred for some time. The victim was lying on his right side with his head pressed against the rear passenger side door. The victim's legs were bent at the knee, with the lower half of his legs and feet resting on the seat portion of the rear driver's side seat. The victim was dressed in a tank top, pair of shorts, brown shoes, and black socks. The rear windowsill, rear bench seat, and rear floorboards supported dead flies and empty pupae. The rear floorboards also supported live fly larvae. A set of automobile keys were hanging from a branch 25 feet northwest of the rear of the vehicle. That is the description of the scene, as it were, at least the interior of the scene.
The film is gross.
Yeah. Yes, it is. I don't quite know where it's supposed to have come from. I don't know if it's like a result of the insect activity or what.
I think a decomposing body in an enclosed environment.
The fly pupae and larvae really gross me out. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to technically be repeating some of what we already just read, but for the body to fit in the back seat, Daniel had been positioned so he laid him mostly on the floor, seemingly face down while his legs were bent, feet up on the back seat, amongst a variety of flannel shirts, beach towels from his recent outing, and other various clothes. When they found him under the pile of clothes, his skin was dry and decomposing, but despite the skin darkening with decomposition, a tattoo on his right arm remained identifiable. That seemed to be the only secret the body gave up, though, as the organs had either been eaten or had decomposed, with the body too dried out to run toxicology. In terms of evidence, investigators had the twin-size mattress pad, 2 animal hairs, 1 black, 1 reddish blonde, 2 paint chips, 4 hairs from a Caucasian, possibly different people, and gold and green carpet fibers.
Was there any indication that those items were already in his car?
The mattress pad was identified as not his. The animal hairs, they did take samples from the family pets and stuff like that. And as well as like, they essentially checked to make sure that it wasn't the family home. Mm-hmm. And it seems that their test ruled out the family home.
Okay.
So with no obvious signs of blunt force trauma or any punctures caused by bullets, knives, or otherwise, the situation was confounding. How did this man die, and how did he get left in such a manner? As police began to ask those questions, they also learned of a new question to ask. Just who did want Daniel Hazard dead, and if not dead, hidden? Shortly after Daniel was found, Randy Chappell contacted investigators again, having new tips to share. It is from Randy did police learn that one of Daniel's friends had apparently seen him after he went for the drive, a man by the name of Kyle Studaker. Not only that, but he had called and visited Virginia several times after the disappearance, at one point asking if she had any plan for Daniel's belongings, even as his story of the final visit shifted several times.
So Kyle Studaker would have been Dan's friend.
Yes.
and he had spent time with him prior to the disappearance.
Apparently, is what he's claiming.
Mm-hmm. And now he's asking for
His stuff.
belongings.
Mm-hmm. Add to that the fact that Studeaker seemed suddenly nervous around the Van Conant Chapel family since the disappearance, despite the lifelong friendship Hazard had had with Studeaker, the latter having been over to visit several times over the years. So he's getting nervous around people he has no reason to really get nervous around anymore.
So this is a lifelong friend who knows a family who was close with Dan.
Mm-hmm.
Did we mention him yet?
Nope, this is the first time.
Okay.
Another friend of Hazard's, one Scott Hicks, identified himself as Dan's best friend, saying that they were as close as brothers and that Dan had said nothing about fearing for his life prior to his death. He also attested that he knew of Studeaker by name, not by acquaintanceship, and that he would be his second guess as to who was responsible for the death. His first guess? Mike Trombley, a bank robber arrested in San Juan County for attempting to rob a Lexington bank to fund a fix. I will cover him more in depth in another episode, but needless to say, this first theory of Hicks does not hold water in large part because Mike Trombley was in prison for the entirety of Daniel being missing and then found.
Why did he think that? What was Trombley's motivation? Or what did Scott Hicks think that Trombley's motivation was?
So Trombley and Hazard apparently did drugs together.
Okay.
So apparently the motivation would have been a drug debt kind of thing, according to Hicks. But again, Hicks was kind of spitballing, it seemed like, because he was like, I don't even know if Mike Trombley is out, but if there's anybody who would have killed Scott Hazard, Mike Trombley would be the first person, I would assume.
Yeah.
So it seems that at least before he went into prison, Mike and Hazard had some issues.
Okay.
Whether or not he would have actually acted on those when he got out is another question because, for instance, he robbed a bank because he was trying to fund an addiction. So he wasn't quite in a good place for making decisions.
And Scott's second theory, being Studeaker, would be for the same reason, it being a drug debt.
Yes and no, more so because of what he was told by Randy Chappell, which was essentially like, yeah, Kyle came over like the day after Daniel went missing, was like asking where he was, asking what mom was going to do with the stuff, so on and so forth. It was really weird. Like based on that kind of stuff, he was saying Studeaker would be a second guess.
That was the day after he went missing. He was asking the family about...
Not necessarily the day after he went missing asking for the stuff. That seemed to be like 2 to 3 days after, which isn't any better.
But the day after he showed up and was like, hey, where's
Dan?
Yeah.
However, Hicks revealed that Daniel had been growing weed in Buell Township and that after the disappearance, Hicks had checked in on the hidden stash only to find that it had all been harvested, which he feels that Hazard would have mentioned to him if he had harvested the weed himself.
Yeah, this guy who's like his brother definitely would have known.
Yeah.
If suddenly he's harvesting pot plants.
I was going to say, yeah, after all, Hicks was the one who knew that Hazard was still using drugs. Like, usually cocaine and marijuana, but apparently Daniel preferred crank, aka methamphetamine, which would give him a 3 to 4 day high to enjoy.
So he was a hard drug user.
Yes.
I guess I didn't realize that. Like, I knew he was
a drug user, but not how hardcore.
Hardcore, yeah.
Again, it seems more like meth when he could get his hands on it, but cocaine and marijuana when pickings were slim.
Yeah.
Which, again, is kind of crazy to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Scott Hicks also advised that while the stalking ex-husband of Hazard's ex-wife could be capable of the murder, he believed that if the ex-husband had killed Hazard, the body would not have been dumped in Worth Township. He believes it would have been dumped closer to Carsonville.
That tracks.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Besides hanging around his ex-wife, Daniel had other dangerous habits apparently, like pursuing his ex-girlfriend despite warnings by her brothers to leave her alone, having an affair with a married woman, and even getting a man arrested on possession charges for picking up drugs meant for Hazard. All of these tips were ran down with somebody in the investigation told police, I didn't do it, I'll take a polygraph like as soon as he got asked about cooperating. But yeah, the ex-girlfriend and her brothers got cleared. The husband did not know about the affair, so he wasn't motivated to commit murder. And again, the guy who would have been motivated to kill Hazard for putting him in jail was in jail.
So all these people who, like you were talking about, Mike, who seemed like they could potentially be suspects, have essentially been ruled out, except for the Studaker.
Yeah. So they were stuck having to return to the one angle that was just as odd as the case itself, that of Kyle Studaker, friend and supposed last one to see Danny before he disappeared. Virginia Van Conant was suspicious of Kyle Studaker, and it seems that she did not care who knew it. She was eager to share her findings with the police, the odd occurrences that were Kyle's visits after Danny disappeared. Studaker was a friend with whom Danny smoked marijuana and drank beer with, and it had been him to show up the day after Danny disappeared, that following Wednesday, with scrapes and scratches on his hands, asking if Danny was around. When asked, he told Virginia the injuries happened while he was fixing his car. Later, he would tell investigators that he was injured while doing work for his drywall business. Several more days passed, and Kyle appeared again, this time asking what she planned on doing with Danny's things. Virginia frostily told him she intended to see her son come home, and so had no plans for her son's possessions.
Yeah, so at this point, he's not been found or declared dead or anything, and this guy's asking...
He hasn't even been declared missing yet.
Right,
or
just
volunteering.
Right.
Yeah, because that wasn't until 6 days later. 6 or 7 days later.
Yeah. Kyle allegedly claimed that Dan was trying to get back with his ex-wife, then later switched the story to Dan trying to get back with his ex-girlfriend. Which, maybe, but also at the same time, Virginia was kind of like, I feel like he would have, like, if not mentioned that, he would have still come home in between. So, Kyle was having struggles of his own at the time of Danny's disappearance, with his wife leaving him for about a month in October 1998, leaving him at home with their 3 children while he tried to run his drywalling business. He claimed that she was tired of the feast or famine lifestyle that came with the small business ownership, and also resented his drinking. She said that he was mean, that he was mean to her and the kids, not necessarily violent, but abusive. And yeah, the drinking was a problem. While he said they were working things out when initially contacted by investigators, the wife was adamant that that would not be happening. It seemed that they reconciled for a time at the end of 1998, but considering the fact that the wife remarried in 2003, I'm going to presume the divorce was ultimately pursued and granted. So, while separated, Kyle's wife had a personal protective order against him and was living with her mother. On the day in question, Tracy had been home when Dan visited and believed that he spent most of it in the basement with her husband, where they usually smoked weed and hung out. She remembered that visit was for less than an hour, but not at what time, just that it was later in the day. Danny would usually visit several times a week and then not at all for weeks at a time. She does remember that Kyle came back into the house when Dan left, driving east down Atkin Road as he left in his car. Despite his bad reputation, Kyle's wife liked Dan Hazard, as he was nice to her and her kids, even giving them a twin bed.
How far in advance to him missing was this that they were hanging out? What did that Tracy's saying?
She's saying that at least on the day that he went missing,
he was over there.
He was over there.
Yeah.
She doesn't know what time, just that it was later in the day. So whether that means late afternoon or evening, I'm not quite sure, but it definitely still is fitting what we know, even if it's just the broad strokes. When investigators floated the idea that Hazard and Kyle were doing cocaine or crack together in the basement, she reacted with shock and concern, especially as she had not been aware of such behavior. She did tell officers that Kyle had previously sought help for a cocaine problem, but that had been almost a decade prior, and that she didn't know of him going back to the drug. After interviewing the wife, Michigan State Police were a bit surprised to hear from Kyle Studaker, finally, as they had been trying to get his statement for some time. About 5 days after his wife's interview, Kyle had his written statement prepared. While he was on the phone with investigators, it seemed as if he was probing for the case status, mentioning that he knew they talked to his wife, despite them asking her to keep it confidential. He seemed particularly concerned about the questions asked of her regarding Dan's last visit, his alleged crack use, and the twin beds given to them by Dan. With their suspicions and recent interviews in hand, investigators obtained a search warrant for the Studeaker home. In a slightly awkward moment, when investigators went to serve the warrant, Kyle was not home, but the kids were, with the oldest being 13 years old at the time and the youngest being 5. So this would be essentially like if your kids were served a warrant while you were not home.
I can't imagine that.
I was going to say, yeah, because for one thing, you're...
Well, you can't... What are they just have to leave and come back later, right? You can't... If there's not someone over the age of 18 in the home or an adult there, but...
You would think so.
Are you able to... Is a minor able to consent to a search warrant? Do you consent to a search warrant? You don't, do you? They're just like, yeah, but you're not serving the warrant to the person it's written for. I don't know.
No. It's
I'm no lawyer.
No, that's fair. It's definitely a weird situation because I was like, I feel like somebody should be here with them, but at the same time, it feels like protocol was followed.
So when you do a search warrant and somebody, like nobody's home at all, can you kick the door down and go in? Or do you have to wait until someone shows up?
Presumably, I think you're supposed to like... Well, I guess it depends on what the warrant's for.
Yeah, I guess.
Because some warrants, like, you don't want to inform the person that you're coming in.
Just curious.
No, it's
weird.
It's a completely fair question, and I should have read up more on like warrants and how they are served because, yeah. it was definitely weird. Yeah, no, literally 13 through 5-year-old. Though they did not know where their father was or when he would be back, after talking with police, the kids essentially consented to the search, saying they were comfortable and didn't need to call anyone to come for them, be it to sit with them or pick them up or anything like that during the search.
How do you feel about that, Mike?
I feel like a minor probably can't consent to a search.
Kind of what I was thinking.
But it kind of makes me think that with the search warrant, they don't need it.
They don't need it.
Mm-hmm. Because I feel like that would be a pretty big screw up otherwise. So, I don't know. Like you said, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm gonna assume that they didn't need the consent of the children.
They were more asking like to make sure the kids were comfortable and not frightened.
And not traumatized and stuff. So, gold carpet fibers were found with hair pulled from Kyle and his 11-year-old son, as well as from the family pets. Paint chips were also taken from the residence, with it unclear if there was any conclusive matches made from these samples. I say unclear.
Presumably not.
I say unclear just because it was redacted to all heck. So there could have been some matches. There could have been like an 85% or something like that, but I have no idea because all of that stuff got redacted. Mm-hmm. By the time Kyle was officially interviewed, it was January 1999, and about 6 months had passed since Dan went missing. It was during the interview did investigators learn that from Studeaker himself that he based his written statement more on what others told him than what he personally remembered. Like, they literally went through his statement and was like, give us a percentage of how much is, like, based on what you remember versus what is based on what people told you. And there were so many things that were like based on what people told him.
Mm-hmm. I'm just not going to say anything.
Yep. Despite all the red flags, he told investigators he wanted to cooperate, even agreeing to a polygraph test. According to Studeaker, he visited Virginia after Dan disappeared to check on her. He did not say if she called him first or if he came on his own volition. And he didn't remember whether or not he had asked after Dan's belongings, nor if she had asked about the cuts on his hand, which is when he explained that he had got them from work, even though allegedly he told Virginia that he got them from working on his car. Mm-hmm. He had also spoken to Virginia at the funeral after Randy had told him to leave his mother alone and to call Randy with any concerns or tips for investigators. He did call Virginia when he was writing his statement for the police. On the topic of cocaine, it was unclear where Kyle actually stood. Rumor and previous information told investigators that Kyle was using the substance, but he himself denied it, even saying that cocaine usage was the reason he didn't like Danny's other friends. He did admit that they may have smoked marijuana the day of the disappearance. And by may have, it was definitely we smoked marijuana. Investigators confronted Kyle about his inconsistencies in his timeline and story. For one, while his wife claimed Dan left heading east, he said Dan drove west when leaving. Furthermore, he initially said Dan visited at 8 p.m., but he later amended that to 2 p.m., which could have worked depending on how long Dan stayed with his family for the beach and lunch outing, but it still seems unlikely, especially after describing Dan as cleaned up. Like, cleaned up, had a shower, was dressed in nice clothes and stuff like that, not Sandy just came from the beach in tank top and shorts and stuff like that they know based on what he was wearing at death was what he was wearing when he went missing. Based on Virginia's description and the clothing Dan was found in, he wouldn't have been in different clothes and was sweaty from outdoor work. It's unlikely he was clean by any degree. When pressed on these details, Kyle said he was possibly misremembering and that maybe Dan had visited twice that day, actually. It won't come as a surprise, then, when I tell you that Kyle's polygraph proved inconclusive, which apparently upset the man and seemingly shut down that avenue of investigation. Not because police didn't think it was a good lead, but because the Studakers refused to cooperate further, with the wife's lawyer advising her against further talking to the police or taking a polygraph test. It should be noted, though, that when the police questioned the family one last time, their stories seemed to match up better, even as the details were just a bit off. For instance, one of the children identified the car as light blue, not dark burgundy, and the wife had corrected herself, saying that actually the car was going west when Dan left, and that he'd been only there for 15 minutes or so, staying on the porch, not coming inside. It wouldn't be until November 2005 that another report concerning Studaker would be brought to the Michigan State Police. A Sanilac County Sheriff's detective had been contacted by the ex-girlfriend of Kyle. They dated in the 2000s after his divorce, having a child and a volatile relationship together, with the ex-girlfriend confessing that one night after drugging him with Thorazine, an antipsychotic, like she put it in a beer because she knew that he was going to swipe her beer from her. So she put it in a beer that was meant for herself. He took it, drank most of it, and...
But why is she drugging him?
Yeah, she was.
No, but why?
Oh, because of the fact that he was being abusive, and she was like...
Just didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah, didn't want to deal with it. But while he was in his loopy state, he threatened her by saying that he was dangerous and had killed Danny Hazard. He clarified he hadn't killed him directly. Rather, the cocaine they were doing in the basement did, with Danny supposedly overdosing and Kyle possibly getting his 11-year-old son to help him dispose of the body. This went past his usual claim of being the last one to see Dan alive. To add mystery onto this odd situation, a later incident between Studaker and Dave Hall raised more questions. Studaker's child with the girlfriend allegedly was playing with the phone one day when they called the police by accident, with Dave Hall and company responding.
Dave Hall and company, I like that.
Once the situation was figured out as Hall was leaving, Kyle randomly called after him, "You know I didn't kill Dan Hazard."
So they got the call and then showed up at the home for a welfare check. And
yeah. Realized, it was just a baby playing with the phone. As Dave Hall's walking out, Kyle comes out on the front porch and is like, "You know I didn't kill Dan Hazard."
When was this?
This was about between 2003 2005.
So at this point, he had essentially gotten away with it.
Mm-hmm.
If he was the one who killed.
If he was the one who did it, yeah.
So why even mention that? It wasn't like Dave Hall was still investigating it, was he?
He was technically the point person if the investigation came back around, but the investigation was not active, no. And Hall responded saying that, yeah, I know you didn't kill Dan Hazard. If you did, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You'd be in jail.
Mm-hmm.
Around the same time, another person reported having seen Kyle Studaker leaving the DTE property at 4 a.m. one morning, covered in blood. They say that it was about 2003, but they also admit that they may be thinking that it may have been earlier than that. But they witnessed him in the area of the DTE property coming out of the bushes on the side of the road, face all cut up. And it looked like he had been planting like marijuana, but Dave Hall, having followed up on this tip, said that it had nothing to do with Hazard's case.
It was Kyle Studeker?
It was supposedly Kyle Studeker. I say supposedly because of the fact that, like, it could have been Kyle, it could have been somebody who looked like Kyle enough where it got tipped off.
Someone saw him coming out of the DTE property?
With blood on his face.
Like years later?
Years later.
And it was investigated by Dave Hall.
Who said it wasn't related to the Dan Hazard thing.
But he didn't
do
elaborate
anything
on that. Like, it was...
Just said, has nothing to do with Dan Hazard. Did not elaborate further. Basically called the tip bunk. Which, fair enough, I suppose. But at the same time, it's like, at the very least, if it's not to do with the case, it's still a weird incident.
Right.
And that short and blunt of like a reply.
Yeah.
Like, oh, no, it was just some kid, or oh, there was nobody there. Or somebody like, no, I had nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't say it didn't have anything to do with Kyle Studeker.
Right.
He just said it had nothing to do with Dan Hazard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which brings us to now. Truly, there have been no developments over the years aside from Virginia, who would plead for answers in public letters to newspapers. There are several. Honestly,
It's sad.
It's very sad.
It's the gist of it. I've read some of them. It's just like a mother pleading with the public and Sanilac County law enforcement, or any law enforcement for that matter, to bring justice to her son. And she essentially suggests that she knows who it is, but does she mention
Never by name.
her suspect's name? Yeah.
Never by name. Which, in fairness, it's because of the fact that he apparently threatened her with a BB gun at one point and was saying that she, as well as the Michigan State Police, were claiming that we're spreading around rumors that he killed Dan Hazard and everything like that.
Kyle Studeker claimed that the Michigan State Police was spreading rumors too?
Yes. Unfortunately, Virginia never saw justice, dying at age 84 in 2020. However, it sounds as if she was sure of who she thought did it, but whether her assumption is correct or not is to be debated. Without a confession or the right tip, I'm not sure how this case will be solved, but when it is, I'm sure that Virginia will be more than grateful. And that's the end of my script. So, having seen some pictures, looked at the graph, and heard some details, what are we thinking and feeling?
I think when Kyle Studeker was drugged by his ex-girlfriend or his girlfriend, whatever.
Ex-girlfriend, yeah.
Obviously, that's nothing that you could use in court or anything because he was under the influence. But, I mean, I think that kind of tells a lot.
It's definitely suspect.
Because if you think so what he had said was that he didn't kill Dan, but he died from the cocaine that they were doing together in the basement. And if that's what happened, it would make sense that he wrapped up the body and tried to hide it. So not necessarily killed him, but he was there when it happened. Because when you look at the pictures and the crime scene and stuff, it does kind of look like something that was just hastily covered up.
Like staged, but not very well.
Right. But it also doesn't really look like a murder scene necessarily.
I was going to say
that's where someone dumped somebody.
Right.
I was going to say, like, there's not enough blood or anything like that for it to be an actual crime scene.
I am kind of curious because looking at the photos, like obviously there was a reason that he took him to that spot. Like I don't know what his connection would be to that property, how he would know about that property, but obviously it was a pretty good spot to try and hide a body, which he successfully did.
For 3 months, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, everybody out in that area, like, knows about the DTE property.
Right.
You know, like, it was probably...
It's also very easy to accidentally drive onto that property. Like it's not
I
like
have.
yeah, I have as well. So it's not like if you're thinking of like a DTE property, it's not something that's like fenced in or anything.
Right.
Like it's just
It's literally
a
700
large area.
acres.
Yeah. If there was people constantly, well, I guess not constantly, but at least during hunting season that would patrol the area to look for people trespassing, I don't know, it must have been enough of a problem, you know, that people were on the property and stuff. I also think back to at the very beginning of the episode when you said his very last day before he went to the beach, at the beginning of the day he went and certified his unemployment. That would mean that he would have his unemployment check, and that would mean that he would have money
you're right.
for cocaine, which would also, it would kind of line up for Kyle saying that he saw him twice during that day, because maybe he met up with him at 2:00, and then like he gave him the money to go get the drugs, and then he met up with him again later that night after he went out with his family to the beach and out to dinner and everything.
I didn't think of that.
I mean, it's unfortunate that he said all of that stuff while he was under the influence, because obviously cops can't use that.
It's like the whole truth serum thing once again.
Right. But I think, yes, there was a lot of people that had motivation for doing it, but as we learn more, you know, and it's not to say that Kyle Studeaker is a murderer by any means, you know,
or that even he disposed of the body, but it definitely, it's definitely odd.
The other thing I had a question about was the mattress pad. Just you saying that Dan had given Kyle's children a twin mattress or something. Did they determine if that mattress pad came from that bed, or is it?
Again, that part was like, if not inconclusive, then it was just redacted to all heck. That was the more frustrating parts when it came to the evidence and the those nitty-gritty details.
What about the unredacted one you got? Was there anything?
There wasn't any of the evidence kind of stuff. It was mostly the interviews. I kind of wonder, because they asked him at least 5 questions on the polygraph thing. Only 5 questions. And I don't know what they are, because they blacked all that out.
I wonder why.
So there was a story in the Sanilac County News in 2010, written by Tom Driver. You probably had it.
Yes.
There was a couple of interesting things. The second paragraph, according to Virginia Van Conant, 74, she says the prime suspect in her son's murder just flipped her the middle finger. The one finger salute occurred last week as she drove past his house in Croswell. There was also another interesting note that he was a pallbearer at Dan's funeral. But one of her quotes says, "I didn't suspect him at first, but only a good buddy could do this to Danny. A stranger could never have gotten close enough. He always covered his back." Virginia says, "Something went wrong, terribly wrong. I think they fought. I don't think it was planned." I don't know if I would, I don't know. Like, if they fought, like, where would they...
Again, she's operating under the assumption that no drugs were involved. I think she is currently blocking out that possibility because she doesn't want to remember Dan that way.
Right. And that's fair.
It is, yet it isn't. Because, like...
What else would they have fought over?
Because if you admit that your son was into drugs, then at the very worst, if this man... if he was responsible in any way, shape, or form, then it turns him from, like, in Virginia's story, he's a murderer.
Yeah.
Right.
Whereas, like, if you admit that it's drugs, then it's like he was an accidental witness.
It's not as black and white then.
Right.
But she needed it to be black and white. And I understand that in a way, because death is not black and white.
Yeah.
Do you guys still think that there's any potential that any of the other people that were originally discussed, would you still consider any of them still a prime suspect or not necessarily?
Not necessarily a prime suspect, but if this case was solved tomorrow and it was found out that it was that one of the exes had to do something with it, I guess I wouldn't be too surprised. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily that they caused it, but that somebody close to them caused it.
Like what? There's no bullet holes, there's no stab wounds, there's no blunt force trauma.
I know, again, I'm saying, like, if we have to go with the assumption that something actually happened and it wasn't an accidental overdose.
Right.
Because, honestly, I think it was an accidental overdose. Mm-hmm. Because, again, he had breathing problems, so if it wasn't an accidental overdose, it was complications from an overdose.
And it could have been the fact that Kyle was bragging, well, maybe not bragging, but he had said that he had killed Dan, not directly, but he had killed him with the cocaine. You know, it might have been something that was laced with something, or, you know, it almost sounds like he was kind of bragging.
Well, he was also trying to threaten that woman.
Right.
So it's a lot more threatening to say,
yeah,
I'm dangerous, I killed somebody, versus I watched somebody die.
Right. But he did correct himself, and he said that the drugs that he gave Dan,
the drugs that they were doing together were the things that did it. Yeah. Which, again, this is all alleged. Right.
Well, yeah. I feel like it would probably be frustrating for the investigators.
Oh yeah.
Because that was reported to the police, right? That incident.
Yes.
And they probably felt, whether they thought it was credible or not, they knew that there was essentially nothing they could do with that information.
Right. Just put it down in the file.
Right. Because, I mean, obviously, unfortunately, the fact that his body was decomposed, I mean, they really didn't have much to go with.
No, they really had nothing.
So even if they knew who did it, or, you know, I mean, it just, I don't know, must have just been pretty frustrating.
Yeah.
Do you think nowadays, with technology where it is now, they'd be able to,
maybe,
or would have, maybe not now. I mean, I don't know what happened to his corpse, if it was cremated or.
Yeah, that's good. I was going to say, I think he was cremated.
Do you think nowadays the car would have been found sooner?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too.
They probably have cameras all over.
Right.
Cameras as well as GPS.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Someone flying a drone or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just I feel like someone would stumble across it sooner.
Yeah, there was a lot of things that it is kind of impressive / weird to think how much, like, the leaps and bounds that crime fighting has made in the years between now and then. Because, yeah, 1998, like, if you had, like, a pilot, like, with a small aircraft, then maybe you could fly overhead and stuff like that. Whereas now, you just need a drone. Mm-hmm. So that was an episode of Thumbing Through the Archives. Thanks for listening, guys. And while we ponder on this, I hope that you guys take a ponder. And if you guys have any information about this case, contact the San Juan County Sheriff's Office.
It is still technically open.
It is still technically open. Either the San Juan County Sheriff's Office or the Michigan State Police. Either agency can and should be contacted if you have any information that you can and or want to share. But in the meantime, I'm Erica.
I'm Mike.
I'm Nick.
And we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
This has been another edition of Thumbing Through the Archives on WMIC 660 AM and 95.3 FM. Catch this episode in podcast form every Thursday after the program on our website at sanilacbroadcasting.com. Thumbing Through the Archives, produced by Mike Gallagher, Nick Lean, and Erica Frisbee, with assistance from Catherine Connolly.